Hey guys, so in this tutorial I'm going to be talking about variables, comments and data types. So before I talk about variables and comments, I'm going to talk about data types first, because variables store data types. Okay, so now looking at data types, as a programmer you tend to understand how the computer works and start to see the computer as a dumb machine, because it only understands what it is given. That's why we have something like garbage in, garbage out. What you see is what you get. So now we have different type of data type, and one of data types we have is string. So the computer sees every input as data, and we have different data types which are strings. Strings are generally text. So the computer sees it as string, but we as human beings, we see it as text. So example of a string is what is your name. Next one is integer, which is all numbers, and we have floats, decimal numbers, e.g. we have 12.0, and we have Boolean. So Boolean can change depending on the language. So we have Boolean and nulls. Now so Boolean generally is true or false, which is 0 or 1, and nulls is just null. That means it is a null value. We also have arrays. Arrays are lists. So you can have list of items you want to purchase in your purchase in the market. So that's what arrays are. So but we're going to talk about arrays in length in another video. So we also have objects, and objects are collection of data types and functions. They are advanced data types. So also, just like arrays, we are going to talk about objects in length in another tutorial or in another video. Now talking about variables, variables are like containers. So let me open Paint. Let me see if there's in container shape. If not, I'm going to draw a container myself. Now we have this cup. Let's say this is our variable cup. Now a cup holds a liquid or a solid or powder. A cup can even hold air, because air is inside the cup when it's empty. So now a variable is like a container, which is like the cup we are saying right here. So it stores different data types. A variable can store string, can store integer, can store floats, arrays, and different things. So it's just like a cup can store a liquid, or can hold a liquid, can hold a solid, powder, and air. So the air is just like null values. So I explained earlier what the data types are, and I made mention of nulls. So nulls are empty values, just like air is empty. Like just like when the cup is empty, it actually there's air in it. So the air is like a null value for the cup. So now, how do we declare variables? Now we have different keywords for declaring variable. So we have cup equal to so let's say water here. So we can have this, we can have container. Let's call it container. equal to 2, and we have const equal to, let's call it cooler. So let me open my browser, which is already open, and so I don't know why it know to reload. Maybe because I have not been working on it too much. Okay, so let me clear all the errors I have here, which are not much, which was caused by the extensions I have on my browser. So now, so this is the inspect element, or inspect part of your browser. Just like as the names imply, it's used to inspect elements in your website. So it is not illegal to inspect a website. It's totally legal, or else the developers of these browsers will not make it accessible to anyone. Okay, so now this is our elements. The elements tab contains all our HTML. So we can see all our HTML tags are elements. We have our console, which is like the JavaScript debugging tool for your browser. We have sources. Sources is just basically the resources, everything on your website. So you can see here we have scripts and we have app.js, so which is the same thing with my folder structure here, just that the name is different. So assuming I open this normally using the part of this file, you will see something like JavaScript tutorial here instead of this 1.275 here. So we also have network. Network just shows the loading or the status of the assets. So I don't really use this part when I'm debugging. So we have different things. We have application, which like the storage. So console. So let me go back to console now. How do we access variables? I've called variables cop, container, and constant caller. Now these two, let me explain the difference between these two and this now, but first I will explain let. Now, just like softwares, programming language actually get updated. So in the beginning of JavaScript, we actually called variables using this keyword, which is var, standing for variable. So we have var container, but as time went on, this var keyword became deprecated. That means it was no longer used. So even if I use var here, I will not get whipped, or I will not get an error that depending on the browser, some might tell you var keyword deprecated, please use let, something like that. So I won't get any error, only a warning depending on the browser that this keyword is deprecated. But for let is the new way for calling variables. Now for these two, you can assign different values here. So if I come here and say water 1, when I try to print out cup, it's not going to print, it's not going to print this water. Instead it's going to print water 1. Now constant, just like the name implied, it's constant, you cannot change it. Unlike cup, where I can update the value later on in the code, So I've declared the cop value here, the variable here, and I can assign another value to it. But for constant, you cannot assign any other value to it. It's a true and error. So now let me print out the variable, like let me get out the variable. So we have something we call console.log. So it's logging or it's displaying a value to the console part. So console.log, we have cup. You can see we have water 1. So if I come here and remove this, now I don't want to remove this, I actually want to comment it. Now to comment are things that comment naturally is hiding lines or lines of script from your compiler or your browser. So I want to hide this so that my browser will not read it. So what I do is press Ctrl K C, or I use this double backslash and like this. So so double backslash to comment. Now as we have seen, so only people who have access to your code will know that this line is actually there, but it's not being read by your browser. So let me call it cop. Now you can see it here. It's a string and water. So console.log, cop. You see water. You can also assign more values to cop. You can assign food. So when you say console.log cop, you will see it is food it is bringing out. But for const, so container or something like that, so it's cooler. So cooler, you can see here cooler is none. So let me try to assign more values to your cooler. So if I say true, which is Boolean, you see uncaught type error, assignment to constant variable at 1.8. So that means you cannot assign any other variable to constant. So you can have something like constant password, so your password doesn't change, and you have something like constant username, because your username doesn't change. So let me summarize what variables are again. So variables are like containers which hold values. So you can have variable let bool equal to true. So we have bool, you can see the value of true there, it has the value of true. So variables are just containers, and it holds different type of data types, but the data types I used there is just integer, boolean, and string. Now another thing that I still want to emphasize on, now in programming, we all know this is 3. So in programming, 3 is not 3 with the quotation is not equal to 3 like this, because the computer sees this as a string and this as a number. So you can't just come here and say if this is equal to this, because they are not the same thing. The computer sees it as different things. So that's all for variables and data types and comments.